Thank you, everyone, for coming to our conversation on cloud gaming. I had it's not in the printed program, but at a late in the day, I had a thunderbolt that we should rename this cloud gaming panel "Living the Stream." So we are discussing how to live the stream.
And do you want to play your show reel program?
Oh yeah. So for those of you who don't know what Hatch is, so Hatch, we're sponsoring the cloud gaming track, and several Hatch partners are on stage here with us. And just for informational purposes, there's 30 seconds explaining what exactly is Hatch. Can we just? Okay, thank you for that. So that's what we're doing. I will just dive right in. Thank you for the introduction to our panelists. So our first question to kick off this conversation, there's been debate whether consumers are ready for gaming subscription services. Is streaming the key to making, to sort of getting that consumer adoption? And I'm looking at a lot of people wondering, each of you wondering who gets to speak first. Martina, would you like to start?
No, but yay! Sorry, I couldn't resist that one. Sorry, I kind of
good start.
But it made me forget the question, actually.
So gaming subscription services,
Right.
There are a few already, and Vadim was just talking us through how PlayKey is doing. For making that breakout into the mass market, is streaming kind of the key to making it really click for consumers?
I'm not sure if it's the key to it. We've seen, like, over basically the last, as long as video games exist, we've seen that wherever the platform is, if the content is good, then people will come out to play it. But I think it will definitely sort of help with mass market adoption. The kind of games that we do, we do very casual games like Match 3, Hidden Object, and typically the players of those games are kind of the laggers of the sort of industry. They're definitely not the first ones to adopt. So I guess for that type of audience, it could definitely help to make it more and more accessible ways.
Okay. Juhani, I can see you really want to say something.
Yeah. So like I completely agree that we have seen games with the subscription already. So like I don't think it's necessarily key to make that work in with a single game, but I see it as a one key enabler for making that mainstream and making it to work with all different kinds of game types. That you see it now with a few online very popular games that are like platforms on their own, but you don't see it working with more casual games and more simpler games. So I think with the streaming, you can, and we are able to make it finally a globally scalable mass offering in a sense.
I think the users, customers, they are ready for streaming games and they're ready for cloud game streaming games. But if they're ready, we need to provide them premium games. If there would be no premium games, they will not pay for the service because there is no value in this. And there is another barrier on the publisher side, because publishers, if we talk about PC gamers, if PC gaming publishers, big publishers, they will not provide you premium games and new releases for the subscription. And moreover, you will not have multiplayer if you will take the content for the service, because they need to provide you DRM-free builds. It means they don't have Steam. If you don't have Steam, you don't have multiplayer, etc., etc., etc. So you have only single-player game, and customers will not pay for this. So I don't think that's if we talk about PC gamers and PC gamers subscription. I don't think that that's a working model for the future.
So I think I guess the only developer here, so slightly representing that side, maybe as a bit more as a skeptic in a sense that, like, from our perspective, I mean, so we were in your reel as well, developer of Badland, which is on Hatch. It's also on subscription services. Some of them are pretty big, like for instance KDDI in Japan and our SmartPass. So we are on both. Like Badland is pretty much everywhere, so that's like a test tool for them, like understanding the different markets. But so from our perspective, even those are and Badland was a premium game, so it's like it fits those very well. It's very kind of small fraction of our income overall. But then again, premium gaming has been crashing down for many, many years. So all those additional incomes are of course welcome in that sense. As for the streaming, maybe like for instance KDDI is something that, like, you download the game and like you just have like all those games available for you against a monthly fee. The streaming side mostly makes sense for me from the perspective of, for instance, like you guys are doing. Like I have a crappy PC or an old Mac, and then I can play the high-end games, irrespective of like the performance of my hardware, or not needing to shovel 1,000 euros for a new computer. On the mobile side, I don't know, like there's less of that thing, but of course it's a factor also. But then the game experience becomes kind of maybe paramount. Like, I mean, for instance, like our game is physics-based, 60 frames per second, so it's good to have it very smooth. So it is a very kind of heavy requirement for the streaming technology to have equally good experience than you would have, let's say, like installing the game, which takes 2 minutes.
Demo, you mentioned. Oh, Johanna, you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah. So when we started, like we were really thinking this from the consumer perspective, that we knew that there are technical challenges, etc. But like if thinking like this from a consumer point of view, what kind of experience they would like to have, what kind of experience I would like to have, and it's definitely something close to Netflix and the Spotify, that I want to have a very easy way to access great games with one subscription. And when thinking really from that point of view, it becomes, I think, more clear that it's, in a sense, I feel it's inevitable that there is going to be subscription service like that, and it's going to be popular. It just makes lots of sense, and as well the younger generations, they have learned to utilize content and content that way. So I think I truly believe in the subscription economy.
Okay. Thank you. Damo, you were mentioning how premium games have kind of really crashed, especially on mobile. I mean, it's still a thing on console and PC, but mobile, it's a pretty small space now. Do you think this kind of subscription service, given that it performs, the way it should, from a technical point of view, do you think this can offer a pathway back to mobile for premium titles?
I think there would be many people who would welcome that. So I mean, you can always hope, and it would be a nice thing, because like, I mean, now kind of the mobile experience is very much gearing towards free-to-play mechanics, which is just a subset of kind of games. Like, I mean, like premium game by design will be very different. So I mean, if those die away, then you have less of a kind of variety of experiences and as well.
Okay.
But of course, like, I mean, like, let's say that you manage to do, like, Hatch becomes the Netflix of games, then definitely, but like, as long as we need to, like, let's say premium game makers need to kind of just try to get all the additional revenue streams from here and there, there's very little resources per game, per platform that you can like spend, for instance, for porting that game onto the platforms. But if one would jump massive, then of course that changes the market some.
Jolene, you've been quiet until now, and Gamehouse, you make these very story-driven games or experiences. What do you think about this?
Well, to go back to the initial question, I think streaming definitely helps to make this more accessible for players, definitely. But it's not per se that a subscription would be, or sorry, it's the other way around, of course. The question, or the question was if streaming is key to make this happen, right? Because there is a debate about subscription. But the debate about subscription is actually something I think consumers are ready for subscription. That has been proven also in other markets, but also in games. Because, for instance, we work together with Bmobi, and they have a subscription service in the mobile app stores in Latin America, and that's working really, really well for us. So it's in that aspect proven that customers are ready for it, and streaming will just enhance this player experience. So yeah, we really believe that for our games, this platform can be a good place.
Okay, great, thanks. Since we do have 3 content developers with us, we have Tamalaki and Gamehouse and Frogmind. I wanted to shift the discussion a little bit to talk about the creative implications. The streaming delivery it's actually a very different consumer experience, customer experience. How do you see kind of game design evolving accordingly, or if at all? Should we discuss that a little bit? Vadim.
It's not only about game design. Of course, game design is very important. And for example, if you talk about World of Tanks for PC and World of Tanks Blitz, it's different games. They have different design, game design, and it's different games. And also, if you how to play GTA 5 on my smartphone, on my iPhone. I can play GTA 5 on my iPhone. How to play Doom on my iPhone. So that's a big problem. Of course, some games, some racing games, maybe they could be launched on tablets. So that's the reason why, for example, PlayKey doesn't go to the mobile market, because we need to fix the control issue. We need to find the way how to work with game designer, and we need to build a catalog which will be available for the mobile, and it will be comfortable for gamers to play. So if you talk about only mobile games, which will be provided for mobile platform, that's okay. But if you talk about PC games, and we would like to import them to the mobile platform, so I don't think that's a good way.
So kind of coming from our experience with our games, where traditionally we made these games with a free-to-play model in mind, where you basically try to make sure that people don't really binge play too much, because you want them to come back day after day after day, etc. But with the sort of subscription stream model, etc., it's not so much about that anymore. I think, as Netflix has proven, streaming is perfect for binge watching, binge gaming, etc. So it's like, from a design point of view, it's also about making the game experience, like one game session, a lot more interesting. And when we compare our stats, for example, from Google Play with our stats on Hatch, we see that people on Hatch do play our games on average like 5 to 10 minutes longer than they do in Google Play. So I think that that kind of proves that thought that with streaming, it does basically allow sort of more for binge sessions, and it helps to allow people to burn through your content faster.
from my perspective, as per like how it affects the design of the game, I guess there's like a slight chicken and egg problem that like if the market becomes big enough that it makes sense for you to pour your resources into making specific platform versions of the game and actually take the platform's different capabilities and possibilities into account, then it will start affecting, of course, that like, let's say that you had a Netflix for games, then you would end up having exclusive content probably there as well at some point, and etc. And then, of course, that content would be catered exactly for that experience.
Yeah, so I think like implications are massive, like in the long run, like when we have the critical mass in the streaming market. So then like developers can really start focusing on making great games in a new way. And there are like really different set of constraints with the cloud gaming, that you don't need to care of the binary size, for example, anymore. You don't need to care of like the content size anymore. So it really doesn't matter if your game takes like 10 gigabytes or if it takes like 100 megs. So you don't need to spend time on thinking, look, this is going to bloat my binary size or the packet size. That's gone. And then like with all like unconstrained in the sense also that you always have some limitations with the storage space and the memory, etc. in the local device. But with the cloud, like you can really build something that's bigger and better in all ways. So I believe like there are lots of ways that you can actually create better games with that. And then cloud gaming also makes it much easier to make games. Like I said about like it simplifies the multiplayer architecture. So it also helps that developers can focus on making great games instead of focusing on the technicalities of network programming, etc. So there is more time to actually spend on storytelling and making great games. So I think it has great implications, big implications, like going forwards.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and then in terms of when we talk about innovating, I think Hatch can also contribute to that because, of course, a critical mass is needed in order to make it work for us as developers. But developing a game is quite expensive. So in order for us to innovate, there's also money needed for that. And I think Hatch could maybe play a role in that and try to invest in driving that innovation in game design.
And for instance, like one interesting thing for us was that it's actually very difficult to do a multiplayer. Like, I mean, Badland has a local multiplayer, which is pretty popular. Like 20% of the sessions, even on the iOS and Android version, have been those. So people play, for instance, in school together on the one screen. But it's a physics-driven game, so I mean, it would require a considerable investment to do that well online. And then again, you basically, like, through hats, it actually kind of, like, comes without any effort. So I mean, like, we don't actually have to pay 100,000 euros for a developer hours of developing that. So I mean, especially because it's harder to be in premium gaming, if you get this kind of capabilities easily and like can kind of cost efficiently add them through the system and the service, and that enables that, that's probably a good thing.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to our next question. And actually, this kind of leads right into that. So, you know, one promise of cloud gaming is this, you know, relative, quite extraordinary ease of use of implementing online multiplayer. So how do you see social play evolving as a result? Who wants to go first? Tamu,
Sure.
I know you guys are working on a lot of social experiences now, so.
Yeah, we're big believers of some. I mean, as a company, we have pretty much moved from the couple guys indie company to like now we're 20 and kind of decided to move onto the free-to-play side, and there we are most interested of multiplayer gaming, because I mean that's kind of keeps things fresh and interesting, playing against actual human beings in real time. And it also, like, you require less content, for instance, for that, because kind of the other person becomes part of the content and the interest of the experience. Now ramble so that I forgot the core of the question. Can you remind me?
I think the question was, do you see social play evolving with this new technology? Like,
so within that technology, yeah. Like, I mean, given the fact that those need to be the premium games and not really, the platform isn't that useful for the free-to-play experiences, then they have usually smaller teams, etc. So, I mean, in that sense, enabling multiplayer without exactly bigger investments into the development, then sure.
Okay. You want to go first, Jolene?
Yeah, if I may.
Go.
So for us, it's not only like social play is not only multiplayer to us. It's also about sharing your experience while playing the game, and I think that could be really good. If I look at it from a perspective from our games, those are story games and they trigger emotions. And as a player, it's really nice to share this gameplay and hopefully attract with that other players. So we see that evolve there, yeah.
Juhani, I can tell you've been...
Well, I would like to hear like what Martin has to say, to be honest.
Sure. So yeah, I've actually been thinking about this question because I immediately was thinking like, well, most of our games are also well, just like Jolene just said with their Gamehouse games, we basically have similar content for a similar audience where it is mostly sort of story driven. It's mostly a single player experience, but with social connectivity. So it's like sharing on Facebook or gifting stuff and whatever, which is mostly based on free to play. So actually my mind was kind of wondering of like, how will we do that for streaming content if we make it sort of a streamer version, where you basically subscription based and stuff, remove all those free to play elements of it, and how would you then sort of adapt that to accommodate to sort of this new business model for it basically, and would it still be possible to sort of do it have a cross-platform social experience? So for example, the people who like downloaded a free-to-play version on Google Play, and then there's like people playing sort of the subscription version on Hatch, for example. Would it be unfair to let them sort of share their experience together? Would that sort of be weird, or could it be an elegant way of solving that? So yeah, I was, like I said, I was getting distracted thinking about that. I don't have an answer yet.
All right. Yeah, one thing that interests me a lot is that can we actually make games to work as like help people to connect better with the games so that they can spend quality times together, and that I think is a very important part of like modern family life, like where lots of children, they are playing mobile games these days. So how can parents actually can connect with the kids, and do they know like what they are playing, and how they can actually share that experience in a meaningful way that many times you have no idea what your kids are playing these days, and there's no way then to discuss about it. There's nothing shared there's no moment shared with your kids that way. So I find it quite interesting to find out, like, would there be a new kind of game designs that would benefit from this kind of shared playing thing, and can we actually make it asymmetric somehow so that the kids can actually can spend more time with the game and learning new things, and then you can kind of visit the same game and you can do something small with that, you can see your kids' progress in the game, etc. Then you have something to talk with the children like later on as well, and that helps to really you to build a better relationship with your children. So that is something I don't see in the gaming right now, and I think that with the cloud gaming, like, we can do something very interesting in that. And as well with the subscription economy, then you don't have advertisement, you have a safe place for the kids to enjoy the content. So I think there's lots of room for innovation in that space.
Actually, what I think is also interesting about this is sort of the crossover between sort of big screen and small screen, where basically, most new TVs are like Android enabled, so basically you could also play there, and the new possibilities with that. Because, I mean, you point out a good thing that, when you don't know what children are playing because it's on a small screen that's like this close to their face, so you don't actually know what they're doing. But if it's like, for example, on a big screen, then it could be like a family experience that you all enjoy together. So that's also, I mean, it's also from our point of view, where we do target family games. Also something that I'll kind of be closely watching and seeing when we sort of can jump into that, because I think it's an exciting opportunity. Yeah.
It is also cloud gaming is open. Cloud gaming opens a way to acquire customers, more customers, and customers can share their experience, their achievements between each other, between platforms, and which means if you have more customers, they can share achievements with more customers, and that means that they will live longer in the product. They will live longer in the product, the game, and in the service. That's the main point of how this could help.
Okay. Oh. Thanks. Let's talk a little bit about this issue has been coming up a bit around on the edges, but how developers get paid and the commercial opportunity and I mean, most of the cloud gaming platforms measure success with gameplay minutes. So my question to the panel is, do you think this favors any particular genre over another one? And is this model fair?
When we had a all-in-one subscription base like a Netflix, I remember we had publishers who wanted to build their own pack, because nobody wants to be in the same pack where World of Tanks, and nobody wants to be in the same pack where another multiplayer game, if they have only single player. But most of game publishers who have single players, not big one publishers, they're okay with the model when you pay for the minutes for the minutes what gamers play. But from our point of view, from PlayKid's point of view, we see that business model, when you're all-in-one business model, it's not working for PC, and so right now we just share the revenue from the activation keys, which we sell to the customers. So that's the simple sharing revenue.
So I've what recently now in mobile is like this, of course, big thing is like the rise of hyper casual, and those typically have short play sessions, and I mean often people do revisit those games like 10 times a day or something, and you could say like, oh, that still totals up to a lot of minutes. But when I look at some of my most popular games, people literally spend hundreds of hours in those sort of free to play hidden object exploring world adventures. But when you think about it, when someone's totally addicted to a hyper-casual game, let's say they whip out their phone 10 times a day to play it 3 minutes, so it's like 30 minutes per day, and they do that for like 10 days straight, and then they're kind of done with it. You're still kind of stuck at 300 minutes, and it's not going to come close to those few hundred hours. So yeah, I guess in a way it does favor certain games more than than sort of the very short gameplay type of games. Someone wants to challenge that?
Just from the side that like every subscription service seems to have that model, and it's probably for a good reason. So I mean, it's at least like kind of morally very appealing in a sense that like it seems very fair. But I would expect that there was a lot of testing and analytics done before everybody kind of accepted that model. So it's probably for clear reasons as well.
Yeah, so we were doing actually lots of analysis on different models and thinking like what would be a fair model to go forwards with, and we actually modeled different kinds of ideas. For example, like paying per sessions and some hybrid combination of the number of sessions and the playing time. And it became quite complex very quickly. And we also found out that it kind of then starts skewing the game design to a certain pattern. For example, like if you just like pay for the sessions, then you would design games with a very short, even forced short session times, etc. So like there would be always a way to game the system to make it kind of unfair for the others. So we and it seems everybody else like are then like using this playtime on the basis of the rev share, and that is because I think it's the simplest model, and it also skews the game design the least. I understand like the concerns that some multiplayer games they're like really like taking big sum of the total gaming hours. But that's only if you think your audience is limited to this hardcore multiplayer audience. That you have to see that this is then like at the same time when we are doing this platform, we are also expanding the audience, and we are bringing games to a new audience, to a more casual audience of people who are not readily playing these multiplayer games. So then it's really about the audience and how skewed that audience is. And I think that is the right way to reason that if you have the audience that love multiplayer games, then of course the multiplayer games should get the most money. But then if you have the casual audience that loves simpler game experiences, I think it balances it out like in a fair way automatically. So we believe that it's really about the audience.
On the PC side, it seems to make a lot of sense because, like, I mean, there you want to play the Fortnites, etc., that are sucking most of the play hours.
Yes,
but
yes.
then you also want to do it on a like maybe your PC doesn't handle it. So I mean, it's natural to go to do that, for instance, in your system. But I guess on mobile, most of those hardcore multiplayer games are free-to-play games, and they wouldn't really be on this system either.
Yes.
Yeah, we think this is a fair compensation to do it on a playtime basis, but also it also has a dependency in terms of looking at the platform. So if you look at Hatch and the amount of games that are on there right now, it's around 100 games. The question is, will this grow to tons of games? Then it's harder for us to stand out, and it's harder to reach that audience. So, yeah, the compensation is fair, but I'm cautious if we be able to reach those players that want to play our games, and then eventually collect that amount of playing minutes. Because looking at Hatch and the performance of our games, it's good already. So that doesn't worry me. But what worries me most if Hatch is going to be another app store. We hope that that's not going to be the case.
Juhani, would you like to speak to that?
When we started Hats, like one of the things we wanted to do is that think of like how to make this platform viable for larger number of game developers. We know that the app stores are quite difficult in a sense that it's winner takes all model. So we were thinking of ways to balance that. And we see that with the app stores, there are some like mechanisms that reinforce the winner takes all thing. For example, like top crossing lists, etc. Like if you get there, like you are going to get just better and better in a way. So there are lots of plans like how do we want to do social discovery, for example, working so that it's not just us choosing the games or it's not just the top ranking list, but it's about like what audience likes and that they can recommend the games to each other. And that is something like that's actually much easier to make in the streaming model because you can send notifications, you can send messages to your friends and they can instantly play the game. I just tweeted actually this morning deep link to Emily's True Love. So if you press the link, you can directly go and play that game. So we believe that this kind of like wider discovery and the social discovery is going to help to make it more leveled for all the developers.
Okay, thanks. Now, I'm just being mindful of the time, so I want to finish with one question. One promise of cloud gaming is the untethering of games to specialized hardware. And I think this is generally something that we like, but are there any downsides? Are there any discontents to cross-platform play? Or do we love it? It's just perfect.
Martin, you look like
I always have something to say. I mean, for us, to be honest, our games are, not sort of the forerunner in the latest technology and like exploring the latest options. So, for us, the more platforms, the better. Cross-platform, yay! But I mean, I can definitely see how. Some things are going to be like unexplored. I mean, for example, devices that sort of allow touch screen and controls, for example. Like how's that? For example, with the TV sort of the TV connectivity that we talked about before, and maybe that's going to have some limitations there. Obviously, right now for the market of VR and AR, that's that I think that currently has most of the technical sort of hang-ups. So yeah, I mean, like I guess right now the whole cloud and streaming is for those developers not that interesting yet. But as the technology becomes more and more sort of normalized and accessible, maybe that's a problem that will solve itself as well.
Any other thoughts, or should we open up the floor?
I guess that kind of the difficult ground for that would exactly be those multiplayer games, like let's say Fortnite, that like playing the mobile version controls against the PC version controls. Like, I mean, when it's very skill-based multiplayer game, that's tough to balance so that neither would have an advantage over that. But then again, if you talk about games just that you are able to play, for instance, a single-player experience on any platform, then it's probably... I don't see much negatives to that, but like those, yeah. So for instance, I guess for hats that should be fine.
Okay.
Cross-platform is good for single-player games when you can start playing on one device, go to your friends, start playing on another device, go to your living room, start playing on your TV, or go to works and playing on your phone. It's good for single-player games, but it's not good for multiplayer games. You can't play with from your phone. You can't play with gamers on Xbox or on a PC. So it's very difficult for you. It's not a balance.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if you think just like hardcore, like player versus player competitive playing, like where every millisecond matters and where every benefit you get from a good controller matters, then of course like it's not fair fight if you have different devices. But then again, there are many other gaming types what can readily benefit from this all-screen gaming. And I think Nintendo Switch shows it quite well that you can have a great gaming experience that works on mobile and on TV. And I find it quite interesting, for example, that you could play at home on TV and somebody could join that session from a mobile. And it really doesn't need to be always competitive or hardcore PvP. It can be almost like, it can be cooperative playing, for example, asymmetric playing, so that you can actually do some different things with the mobile. Like those some Nintendo games, like where you can actually help the other player with your controller screen, etc. So I think there are many different gaming types, and we shouldn't restrict our thinking only on very competitive PvP.
That is a very good note to open up the floor. Any questions?
We have literally 2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right. Yes.
But I need to steal your microphone. Sorry.
Hello. I've been doing the cloud gaming thing for a long time, as I said earlier, and I've heard Netflix for games for many years now. I think we have to be very careful when we use Netflix for games. There's a lot of things that are different, and when we look at it now, we also see the disaggregation of Netflix. We see Disney going off in their own direction, taking their content away. We see HBO going off in their own direction. We have Amazon. And so we are already seeing video, which is a few years ahead of streaming games, moving sort of in a different direction again. I like what Hatch is doing from a curation point of view. I think the other side of it, when we look and we hear Jolene speaking and saying, what do we do with if it keeps growing? What happens if Sally appears next to World of Tanks Blitz? And so I think really it's the idea of sort of from your perspective, I guess, kind of how do you manage that? How do you not become another app store? How do you keep sort of that focus that also does the right thing by the publishers who are putting the content on it so it doesn't become watered down and doesn't just become yet another app store that's trying to divide up a subscription now amongst 10,000 publishers or developers?
Thank you.
So is that for me or?
Yeah, I think it's a general sort of thoughts and...
Okay, well, I could start. I see it from the consumer point of view. So when people are talking about the Netflix for games, it's about how approachable the gaming can be. So they are like, I think, good benchmark on that one. Then again, like I think there are going to be a different kind of gaming services for different needs and for different audience. Like we see here, like we have like different kinds of solution each, and for very, very different audiences. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all model going forwards. And then, in a sense, what I see is important is that it's the on-demand gaming, that it's just more approachable. So that's what I see is the point. The point of the app stores is the technical distribution, but they are also doing the discovery for that. And for the discovery part, I see that we need to find solutions that do not all come from basically from same path. So for example, the social discovery, then it's up to the people who they recommend. We provide deep linking for the games, so like the developers can build discovery systems of their own around it, etc. So I don't think it's that the challenge with the app stores is that it's basically only one party that controls the whole discovery process there.